What's up, White Sox fans, and welcome to a Monday morning edition of Believe in White Sox. We're recording this on a Sunday night. I'm your host, Greg Moraz. As always, make sure you hit like, hit subscribe. Do it on all the platforms, the YouTube page, the podcast platforms, everywhere we can grow the show, we want to grow the show. So I was out at Rate Field yesterday, or as you're watching or listening to this today, and the White Sox broke their 7-game losing streak. They won 6-4 over the Guardians. Really nice outing for Davis Martin. Only gave up one home run. That was to Kyle Manzardo. Kyle Manzardo has got the White Sox number. The last two White Sox games I've gone to, which have both been against the Guardians, or two of the last three, all three of them against the Guardians, Kyle Manzardo has combined to hit 3 home runs. He hit 2 home runs yesterday. And the thing about this White Sox team and this is really what I want to talk about today, is that they're a really good team when they're at their best. They, at their best, are better than what the last 2 years, 23 and 24's White Sox teams have been. The problem is that they're not at that point very much. They're at it a lot more now than they were last year. But they're in a position where you see guys perform great at times and you feel hopeful about what can they do for our future. And then you look at them at other times and you say, I'm not exactly sure where this guy fits into the future of this organization. That's how I feel with guys like Luis Robert, because with Luis Robert not getting traded and the White Sox effectively, you would think, hanging on to him and putting the option in for next year, there are periods of time where you look at his numbers and you say, this guy is somebody that's an all-star. And he was an all-star at one point in 2023, but it just goes to show that the consistency that is being shown throughout the development of some of these guys waivers, but you know that the potential is there. Luis Robert, over his last 15 games, is hitting 327, but he only has 2 homers in that span. Over his last 7, he's hitting 308. Over his last 30 games overall, he's hitting 294. And that's how he's gotten his average up from the 180s all the way up to 222. Now, is he going to finish the year with an average above 235? Probably not. But I think what you see when Luis Robert is at his best is somebody that can be the best hitter on your team. And I think that today, at least, or yesterday, I should say, the home run from Colson Montgomery that went 452 feet, his 9th career homer. He's already got 9 bombs in basically a month and change of playing time. Shows me that at his best, Colson Montgomery could be this team's best hitter down the line. He might be their 3rd or 4th best hitter right now. And with the injury to Chase Meidroth, it's actually giving the White Sox some opportunities to play him at shortstop. And he's looked good at shortstop. However, somebody 6'4", I'm not sure if he's going to end up being the shortstop of the future. But you have these reps now to where you can play him as much at short as you want. And the way that the White Sox infield is working out right now, Curtis Mead's playing a lot of first base because of the fact that, number one, you just picked him up from the Rays, and you really want to see what you have in him. I think that Curtis Mead is somebody that fits on this roster, at least for the near future, because he does have some versatility. I was questioning when we did our last episode, like, what does this guy actually look like? Because he looked like a much bigger dude than he actually is. I haven't seen him play anywhere other than first base yet, so I'd like to actually see what he looks like when he plays somewhere else in the field. But if he can play third, then there is some encouragement, at least for me, in terms of where he can go. Let's actually take a look real quick where Curtis Mead has played throughout certain times of the year. And at least according to MLB.com's fielding logs. Oh, does it not tell you what position? Okay. So in his MLB career, he has played 25 games at first, 42 games at second, 40 games at third. So he can play a variety of different positions. The White Sox right now, just because of the fact that Miguel Vargas is on the IL and for whatever reason, they don't want to bring Tim Elko back up, he's playing first base. But the way that the infield is structured right now, I want to see Colson Montgomery play more at short, even when Mydroth comes back. I want to see Mydroth play more at second base because it gives you the opportunity to be the team that is going to be the team at their best moving forward. And that's really kind of what I see is when the White Sox are at their best, you've got those two up the middle, at least for the near future. And I think a lot of people thought that Colson Montgomery it was going to be lucky to get anything productive out of him at the big league level because of the fact that his development had slowed early on this year. Well, that's not the case really anymore. But what you also have to see with this White Sox team is what pieces fit at the corners. Is Miguel Vargas going to end up being your third baseman to start next year when he comes back from his oblique? Is he going to play a lot of third? Or you can see Curtis Mead play a little bit of third and be that guy that can play both corners or play second? And I think Lenyn Sosa kind of fits into that same mold. Now, we haven't seen him really play much third, some third, if I'm remembering correctly, but not a lot. But I think that Lenyn Sosa, if Mydroth gets back before Vargas, I would like to see Sosa play first every day, and I'd like to see Mead play some third because as currently constructed, that might be the team that gets you the best chance to win. Brooks Baldwin could fit in a couple of places. Now, he made an atrocious error in left field today and was subsequently yanked from the game in the middle innings by Will Venable, and they left him out there for a good amount of time after that first inning error. Thankfully, it did not end up coming back to bite the White Sox, but I think that Brooks Baldwin still has some work to do in terms of becoming an everyday outfielder, but he's somebody you still can put at a variety of different positions now. And you might be thinking, well, Greg, you're talking about the same thing that you did last time. Well, I'm trying to find different angles to put on this because of the fact the White Sox had lost 7 in a row. Like, they go out to Anaheim, they win 2 of 3, then they blow a significant lead in the Sunday game against the Angels, get swept against the Mariners, and end up losing the first 2 games against the Guardians before they win the series finale. And look, I allude to it all the time. The White Sox are 9-25 in one-run games. There's not a team in baseball that has a worse winning percentage in one-run games, and the White Sox are the only team in baseball that has won fewer than 10 one-run games. Even the Rockies have won more one-run games than the White Sox. And I think that comes with learning how to win. And the more that you put the future out there, the more that you quote unquote have guys that learn how to win. Now, I also think that there has to be transitional periods to guys that you want to be a part of the team that learns how to win. And right now, you don't see that in the outfield. There's really no future outfield key as of yet that is going to start next year on the big league roster. Maybe that's Braden Montgomery. But at least you're seeing the 2 catchers, some of these infielders, learn how to win on the fly and learn how to develop at the big league level. And I think that what you're seeing from somebody like Colson Montgomery is a guy that's only 23 years old, was a high school draft pick, a high school draftee in 2021. Remember, this is a guy, when you think about the development curve for guys that are straight high school guys, normally it takes a lot longer for a guy that comes straight from high school to get to this point. Maybe Billy Carlson can get here by 2028. I doubt that. I think a 2029 arrival is probably the right way to go. And who knows what the White Sox infield is going to look like at that point in time. And realistically speaking, we don't know how this infield is going to continue to develop over the next couple of years. But what we do know is it's the more exciting position group of the two between them and the outfield. And then obviously we've gone at length about trying to get Caro and Teal in the lineup in the same day. And I think there needs to be a solution in terms of what you do in that regard. I also think that maybe the White Sox, they have to figure out how both of those guys are going to get in the lineup at the same time because you're wasting valuable at bats from one of them being on the bench. That's as simple as it goes in that regard. But I also think that the White Sox have some starting pitchers that people want. And I think Davis Martin is one of those guys. I mean, I think that Davis Martin has got enough big league experience now and pitches well enough to where somebody may want him and the White Sox may be able to get something for him. Now, I'm not saying that they should trade him, but I think that Davis Martin, and I've seen a lot of Davis Martin pitch this year, I think Davis Martin is somebody that somebody's going to actually want down the road. And he's still pre-arbitration, but Davis Martin may be a guy that you end up trading down the line because you just don't have room for him. But I also think that Davis Martin is somebody that should be a part of your rotation moving forward because when he is at his best, I mean, he gives up a lot of homers, but when he's at his best, he's really, really good. When Sean Burke is at his best, he's really, really good. He's become a big strikeout guy, but very rarely is his command where it needs to be. Shane Smith, when he's at his best, is really, really good. But I still think this rotation is a big work in progress. And now that you've traded away Adrian Hauser, Aaron Savali is not going to be back next year more than likely. I know we said in our last episode that there's a chance that you could bring Aaron Savali back. I'm less convinced of that. I just don't think that the White Sox are going to want to spend money on a 30-year-old right-handed starter at a price point of $8 million a year when you could get somebody a little bit cheaper or promote internally someone who can do what Aaron Savali has done throughout the year, and that's give you a 4.5 ERA. I think that's a little high for him, but he was terrible on Friday night. I mean, giving up 5 runs in the first inning. Now, he got a couple of unfortunate bounces, but I just don't think that Aaron Savali is worth the price point that he's going to get. So you have, in my opinion, 3 starting pitchers that you can lock in to next year's rotation, at least to start. It's Davis Martin, it's Sean Burke, and it's Shane Smith. And you're probably wondering, well, where's Jonathan Cannon? Well, the White Sox finally sent down Jonathan Cannon after an atrocious outing in Seattle last week. And I know that he's only been at the big leagues for 2 years, but I think that as you start to get more guys coming up, as Drew Thorpe hopefully returns from Tommy John, as Kai Busch returns from Tommy John, there's going to be more competition for rotation spots. Maybe Grant Taylor gets stretched out and is a part of the rotation to begin next year. But I just think that there are going to end up being too many arms competing for rotation spots to where there isn't enough upside to warrant Jonathan Cannon being one of those arms. And I'm not unsold on the fact that the White Sox are going to go out and get a veteran starting pitcher in the offseason. Get a Martin Perez type guy. Maybe they even bring Martin Perez back on a 1-year prove it to get healthy deal. You know, he's started rehabbing. There's a chance he ends up pitching again this year, which I didn't expect. I kind of lost track of where he was in terms of his rehabilitation process. But I think that there is certainly opportunity that one of the 5 rotation spots for next year gets filled with a veteran starter. And I'll say this, on Sunday, Grant Taylor, he's been up and down, but his stuff was electric today. And I think that if the White Sox want to trust Jacob Gonzalez, they just sent him back down. But if they want to trust Jacob Gonzalez to be one of their mainstay bullpen arms and throw Grant Taylor into the closer role, I have no problem keeping Grant Taylor as a reliever, unless you think he's more valuable as a starter. But again, that's what the offseason is going to do. I don't think the White Sox are going to stretch him out into a starter this year. they're not going to do that. There's no reason to do that given his injury history. I think, unfortunately, we've reached the point of the year, this being August 11th, that you're not going to see any new excitement come in the fold on the pitching side of things for the White Sox. You're not going to see anybody that you want to see as a part of this team in the future. Maybe you get somebody back from Charlotte that you've seen before already, like the Owen Whites of the world and the Brian Hudsons of the world who just got sent down. Fraser Ellard is another guy that we talk about. You know, the White Sox just added Elvis Peguero, who the Brewers didn't want. You know, maybe Jared Schuster. Well, Jared Schuster, I think, is out for the year. So, but you know, maybe they decide that they want to stretch Mike Vassell out to be a real full-time starter, and maybe he ends up taking that mantle next year. But unfortunately, what you're going to end up seeing for the rest of the year from the starting rotation, if Jonathan Cannon doesn't come back, and if the White Sox don't promote another starter, is Burke, Savali, Martin, Smith, and then the White Sox are they're going to go with an opener today against the Tigers and then go with Tyler Alexander. I think you're going to see a lot of openers in that fifth spot and then some form of Tyler Alexander or Mike Vassell, which, fine, if that's what you choose to do. But the fact that you don't have a fifth starting pitcher at this point means, and you really don't have a fourth starting pitcher because Aaron Savali is not part of the future. He now serves the purpose of let's eat innings and see how well he can pitch to earn himself a contract somewhere else. Maybe he likes it here enough to where he'll sign for a cheaper deal. I think that if Aaron Savali were to come back to the White Sox next year, he would get signed in probably February. And why you'd sign a guy in February is, he tested the market and, the market came back and said, yeah, you're not worth that much at all. So, what we want to see from this White Sox team the rest of the year, what I want to see is the infield continue to develop, Brooks Baldwin continue to develop as an outfielder, and some semblance of, are there guys in this bullpen that we actually want to see that aren't just roster fillers? I was really having high hopes for Jordan Leisure turnaround. I go, and once again, he gives up a homer. I mean, he is literally right-handed Matt Thornton. No offense to Matt Thornton, but he's right-handed Matt Thornton. That's who he is. That's the MO on a guy who throws hard and the ball doesn't move. So maybe the White Sox have some sort of plan to just take him out of high leverage spots once you get a little bit more depth, try and develop his stuff a little bit more because there's something there. It's just not what you want it to be. And I have trouble talking about this White Sox bullpen because of the fact that I just don't know what it's going to be. I don't know who is going to be a mainstay. Bullpens are transient. They turn over like nobody's business. So how do we judge what this bullpen is going to be next year? And I think a lot of that starts with what the organization, what Chris Getz, what Brian Bannister, what Ethan Katz, and Will Venable want to do in terms of Grant Taylor. Is Grant Taylor going to be a bullpen guy? Or are you going to end up seeing the development arc like Chris Sale where he debuts as a bullpen guy and then gets stretched out into a starter? That still is to be determined, but I think it also depends upon how healthy Drew Thorpe is coming back, how healthy Kai Busch is coming back, and what you might be able to see in terms of development from the minors. Before we go here, Quietly, White Sox first round pick from 2023, Jacob Gonzalez, has made his way to AAA Charlotte. Now, he's not hitting for a high average. He's only hitting a 250 in 12 games, so he's got 2 homers, 7 RBI. On base, though, is a 388. So he's got a really good eye. In Birmingham this year, his on base was at 305 with his average at 244 over the course of 89 games. But Jacob Gonzalez is somebody that I think a lot of White Sox fans have forgotten about because of the fact that he was drafted by the previous regime, and he's not a throwaway because of the fact he's 23 years old and he went to Ole Miss, but I just don't feel like he's somebody that comes up in conversations because he's not Colson Montgomery in terms of the eye-popping power. He's not your first-round pick from last year in Hagen Smith, who has had a good enough year, but the White Sox are still trying to work on his mechanics. And he's not Billy Carlson, who is the flavor of the month that won't be ready for quite a while. But I think that Jacob Gonzalez is somebody that he hasn't been talked about because he hasn't been talked about. But he's at the AAA level. And I think that, maybe you're thinking, oh, well, we don't want to put him on the 40-man roster yet because service time manipulation. Well, if you want to talk about guys that could fill out this infield, I'm going to give you the Charlotte Knights current roster other than him, and I want to give you a couple of options that you've already seen in the infield and guys that I hope you don't see again. Vinny Capra. Okay, it's just Vinny Capra. So, but there are other guys in the outfield that are down there that we don't need to see again. We don't need to see Joshua Palacios again, please. Will Robertson, I'd be fine seeing him again. Dominic Fletcher, I'd be fine seeing him again and giving him another run, but they'd have to put him back on the 40-man. He's not on the 40-man at this point. In fact, the only guys that are on the 40-man at the minor league level are Tim Elko, Brian Ramos, Will Robertson, and that's it on the position player side. Oh, and Corey Lee. Now, the pitching side, Bryce Wilson's no longer on it, even though he started the year on the 40-man or on the big league roster. And Mike Clevenger is somehow still there. He's been bad, so there's no reason to actually bring him back up. But I think that the White Sox, they're going to have to make some moves on the position player side to add guys to the 40-man. And maybe that comes in the offseason, but I think that if Jacob Gonzalez is at the point where he could be big league ready, and maybe he's not right now based on the fact he's only hitting 250, but I mean, I'd rather kill a year of service time, see what he's got. But then the question is, like, where do you put him? And is it to a point where the infield is too crowded and you need to cash in some of your infield capital for some potential outfield capital? The White Sox traded for Drew Baker earlier in the year from Tampa Bay. They picked up Will Robertson, who we've seen at the big league level and was not that impressed with. I think that the White Sox are going to have to figure out a way to add some more outfield minor league depth at the AAA level. Now, Drew Baker, since coming over to Charlotte, is only hitting 238 in 46 games. So maybe he ends up being somebody, and we talked about him on an earlier episode, that you could see him with a good spring training be a part of the big league mix next year. Maybe if you give Will Robertson a chance to play every day, he can be a serviceable outfielder. But there's also a world where, and I don't think it's the most likely world, but I think there's a world where your opening day outfield next year is Andrew Benintendi in left, Mike Tauchman in right, and Luis Robert Jr. in center. And I think you got to have more outfield depth than that. Now, if Robert continues to play well, if he finishes the season on a high note, then as we talked about in the previous episode, there may be an opportunity to actually trade him during the offseason after you pick up the option. I've clearly run out of things to talk about, so we'll leave it at that. And all I can say is let's hope for a few more wins. White Sox are at 43. Let's get them to 50. 3-game series against the Tigers getting started tonight at Rate Field. And then the White Sox are on a six-game road trip that will take them to Kansas City and the surprisingly bad Atlanta Braves. Have a good week, everybody. This is Believe in White Sox here on the Believe Podcast Network.